All right, welcome back. If you haven't tried the mini smoothies in the tiny mason jars, I highly recommend them. They are delicious. There we go. So we're playing a little bit of catch up here, so bear with us, but it is my pleasure to introduce our partner at Twitter, Paul Bowes, and he will be speaking today about how to find the true voice of the consumer on Twitter. So welcome, Paul.
Hey everybody, it's great to be here. Let me just make sure this works, and indeed it does. Yep, listening to the real voice of the customer on Twitter. So first, just a hello and welcome. It's really nice to be here in person, like some of the other presenters have been saying. It's almost surreal in a lot of ways to finally be back in person and seeing everybody again. So it really feels good. And so thanks to everyone who came out today here live. Excuse me. And thanks to everyone who's joining virtually if you couldn't make it or just decided to stay home and be a little more comfortable. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Paul Bowes, and I'm a partner manager on the Twitter developer platform team. I manage the relationship between Twitter and NetBase. I've been here for about 8 years. I'm primarily based out of Boulder, Colorado. But like a lot of people during the pandemic, we made a move to Reno, Nevada to be a little bit closer to family. And I'm going to shamelessly tug on your heartstrings here with this picture of my daughters and my only 2 office mates these days. So they were integral in putting this presentation together, and they could probably tell you just as much about Twitter as I could at this point. They've heard this maybe 100 times. And when I'm not working, I'm pretty much busy chasing them around. So for the last 2 years, I've been working directly with NetBase, and most recently helped them join the Twitter official partner program. And so, sorry, is that? So before I started, I just want to give them a quick congratulations and just recognize this achievement. It's not an easy feat. There's thousands of companies in our ecosystem that work with Twitter data, but only a select few make it into the program. And the badge is really a mark of value, trust, and excellence. And so we really put a lot behind that. And we're happy to have them join the program back in October. And we're excited about what we're going to be doing more together in the future with them. So I've been asked here today to talk a little bit about why Twitter is so valuable for voice of the customer use cases. So I'll talk a little bit about what makes Twitter data unique, why this is a good time to start using this if you haven't already. And then I'll share a few examples of how some companies are doing this today, and a couple other examples that we put together internally at Twitter just to kind of highlight what is possible. So what makes Twitter's platform, audience, and data so unique? There's a number of reasons. I'm going to get into them all, or a lot of them. But at the core of it all is our audience and the way that people use the service that makes it so unique and the way that they express themselves. And so I'm going to play a video real quick that's just going to kind of highlight the way our audience likes to talk on Twitter, hopefully.
I think I will. I gotta have this. Yeah, that's the deal. Let's take it up a notch. Yeah, you'll see. You know we got the stuff. Yeah, leave it to me. I can't help myself. It's what good feels like. It's what it is. It's what good feels like. Yeah, that's it. It's what good feels like. It's what it is. What good feels like. Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. I can't help myself. Yeah. I can't help myself. I think I will. That's it. That's it. Yeah. That's it. It's so incredible. I feel so chill. It's that undeniable with a slow reveal. Let's take it up a notch. Oh yeah, you'll see. You know we got the stuff. leave it to me.
All right, love that video. My office mates absolutely love it. We've watched it 400 times. And it might be giving away my age, but I have no idea who sings that song or where it comes from, and I couldn't find it. So if anyone can tell me what that is, I would love you to let me know, and I'll come home a hero when I can share it with my children. Yeah, you can find me afterwards and let me know. I would really appreciate that. Twitter's what's happening. It's what the world's talking about. If it's happening in the world, it's happening on Twitter. It's undisputed home of news and breaking events, sports, culture, everything. We like to say any given topic, any given time, you can find it happening on Twitter. And there's a few reasons for that. One is that it's global. 80% of Twitter users are actually outside of the United States. It's public. So that's one of the big things that separates us from other social media platforms and other data sources, is that people come to Twitter specifically to share their insights with the world. It's real time. So these are insights that are being shared as it's happening in the moment. And it's conversational because it's public and everyone's connected. You can have these great conversations. So a lot of times what might start out, a single tweet will start these conversations of thousands and thousands of comments, and that whole conversation is what is where you really get to the value. And what are people talking about on Twitter? I actually found this stat really interesting. I would have guessed a much higher number here. Only 20% of Twitter conversations are about news and politics. I think sometimes that doesn't seem like the way it is if you're using Twitter. It feels like you're always hearing from politicians and the blue checks, the authenticated users, but actually 80% is about these other topics, passions people have, gaming, music, TV, entertainment. Uh-oh. Oh no, it's delayed and now it's going to go for it. Sorry. One more back. Can I get one more back? There we go. Yeah, and these communities are sorry. Sorry. These communities are growing. So you can see some of the growth that we're seeing. And these are some of the bigger ones. Finance Twitter is a big one. Gaming Twitter, health Twitter, talk about music and beauty. But really, you can find conversations about any community that you're interested in. And we're doing a lot of work now on the product side of things to make these communities have even more robust conversations. Something called communities that we're testing out. We're testing out something called topics. So the platform should actually be evolving to make these even bigger percentage of the conversation. And I like this next quote. Using Twitter is like dipping your toes into an ocean of human beings. I think it kind of just highlights the fact that, you're seeing an unfiltered view into what people are talking about and thinking. And I really liked this the first few times I read it, but then I started to think about it more and was like, that's kind of gross, actually. So to put it a little bit more succinctly, we just say that Twitter is the world's largest focus group. And not only that, it's unscheduled. So this focus group's happening all the time. This isn't something that you have to put together yourself. It's just out there. It's happening. In fact, there's over 500 million tweets sent every day. And it's not just tweets that are being sent. I mean, you're sending a tweet that's got the text, but there's over 100 pieces of information that are included with each tweet. Things like who the author is, the bio, whether it's got engagement metrics, the time it was sent. So there's all kinds of fascinating data. But it can also be pretty overwhelming, especially for a brand who's just trying to be like, I don't know, we get thousands of mentions a day. It's hard for me to get my head around what's being said. And so that's why the Twitter developer platform team exists, which is the team that I work on. We make this data available to companies like NetBase, and other analytics partners so that they can help you make sense of all this data. This is an obligatory digital maturity curve slide. I'm sure you've all seen something like this, but really the idea is, on the left-hand side, we kind of have these traditional use cases that we've all been seeing, which is, typically like foundational metrics, like how many mentions is my brand getting, what's the share of voice, what's the sentiment, things like that. And that's been very great. Those are all valuable. But what we're trying to do is move people along this to get to more data-driven innovations. And I think this kind of speaks to a lot of what the other presenters have already been talking about today, and using these insights to actually make change at other parts of the organization outside of just marketing. And so today we'll talk a little bit about the voice of the customer and how Twitter data can be used to leverage all this great information that's being talked about. This is a little bit of a dramatic way to put it, but a revolution is underway. Market researchers are moving from question-based methods like polling, interviews, focus groups, to more observational methods. Seeing what people actually talk about when they're not asked, how they behave. And Twitter falls into this bucket of unstructured data, along with things like chat transcripts, call logs, anything that's unstructured. The advancements in natural language processing have made that data a lot more usable in the past few years. And this is something that Brian hinted at in his talk earlier as well. The COVID-19 had a huge impact on consumer behaviors. I think everybody knows that. There's the big COVID wrecking ball. And you could put anything in that conference room and that cartoon would still be true. But I like this quote from McKinsey that says we've covered a decade in days when it comes to digital adoption. So COVID-19 just served to speed up all these things that were already happening. So yeah, consumer expectations and behaviors are changing. Forrester was calling for a 40% increase in digital consumer interactions in 2021. And we're seeing this play out on Twitter as well. We're experiencing great user growth. I think it's, users are growing month over month, year over year. I think it's up to, the latest metric is 211 million daily active users. And 71% of those are sharing their opinions and about brands and products. However, we still see that only that 70% of brands are still relying only on surveys, and a big bulk of those are email surveys. And I'm sure a lot of you have email surveys in your archive folder right now. I know I do. Probably got 5 since I've gotten up here on stage. And every form of feedback collection has its problems, but some of the ones that Twitter can address specifically as it compares to surveys or low response rates. There's an introduction of bias when you're asking the questions. So people are going to tell you, they're only going to answer what you ask them. Cost and speed to insight, even in the best of cases, a survey can take weeks to organize, and so you're not really getting that real-time feel. Whereas on Twitter, when people care about something, they talk about it. And I like this quote a lot too. Twitter is the world stream of consciousness. And this is actually, we say voice of customer a lot, but this is actually really the voice of your customer. Like, these are people that are buying your things and just taking it upon themselves to come and talk about them on Twitter. So we really need to make use of all that valuable information. And again, what makes these things a little bit different, I'll hit this a couple times, but the reactions are in the moment, and that's different than something like a focus group where you might be asking them what their experience was with your product weeks later and completely out of context. They're unprompted. Again, you're not asking them this. This is just like what they're feeling in the moment. They're authentic because they're unprompted. This is just the true way that they feel, and they're emotional. All those things add up to an emotional response that can really be valuable for your brand. And I love this meme. I don't know if anyone's seen it before, but me on Instagram versus me on Twitter, which is just like, it's so perfect. And we also say sometimes like other platforms are a look at me type of platform. Twitter is a look at this. It's like, people don't necessarily share the things about them, to make them look good. Like it's like their true authentic selves. And this is what our users are saying, this isn't us like putting this on them. So I'll run through a couple of examples really quickly. This is an example we put together where we looked at mentions of an airline during the last sort of regular month of travel in February 2020. And we just said, like, let's highlight some examples of how you can monitor an entire customer journey through mentions on Twitter. So we found over 70,000 mentions of this airline, and we found, you can see on here, data about every different stage of the journey: the pre-flight, in-flight, post-flight. And what you end up with is like these really nuanced and interesting pieces of feedback. And I'm just sharing two here, but not only are you getting a review of the food, but you're getting a discussion about the container that it's served in, right? So it's like, did you like your meal? Yes or no? Like, yes, I like my meal, but maybe we didn't ask about how it was served and how that impacts the customer. And this could really be great for informing, future surveys or feedback collections. And then on the right-hand side, there's this whole litany of issues that this person had. And I like to highlight this one because I feel like that's the type of response where if you ask them a few weeks later what their experience was, like that's going right to the trash bin, and they're not going to answer it. And this next example comes from the UK. This is from the Department for Works and Pensions, and this is an organization that helps families who are separating get financial aid to their children. So it's a really important organization. It helps child poverty. They doled out over £1 billion last year to 1 million children, so it's a really critical service. When the lockdown happened, they had a real critical need to find out how it was impacting their customers and customers. And what they found was that people weren't able to access the applications outside of regular business hours, and people were also worried about how they were going to get their payments. And so they went to Twitter to find this out, and were very quickly able to make changes. So they moved from 100% telephone applications to going 80% digital, and they reduced the application time from 45 minutes to 15 minutes. And then they made some changes to the way that people collect money, so that they could get it faster and not have to worry. So this is one from NetBase, and I'm sure they can even talk about this in more depth than I can. This is from a few years ago when Taco Bell launched their breakfast menu, which was new for them and one of the biggest launches in the company's history. So they built this command center on the day of the launch to monitor all social conversations and in real time fix some consumer experience problems. So they launched it on the East Coast, breakfast time. They're monitoring the conversations, tracking the issues, super long lines and certain items were running out. And they were able to use that information in a few hours, notify the West Coast team so that on that end of things, they were able to make those improvements for the West Coast and kind of save the day over there. And finally, this is actually a marketing use case, but I just wanted to kind of highlight the way you can tap into emotions by just looking at Twitter. This was from when McDonald's was looking at how they could connect with their customers. And they discovered that a lot of the conversation about McDonald's is like around these connection moments. So people go to McDonald's like after a big game or after a big test or after the appointments. And so they used that to inform their campaign called Moments of Joy in 2019. And those are some specific examples, about specific brands. This is kind of, you can zoom out too and look at macro issues. And I'll really quickly talk about this one. So the orange line there, the darker orange line is conversations about kind of like green conversations. And then you can see the lighter yellow line is conversations about building back better and green recovery. And just like how the consciousness of all these conversations is changing. And that's important to understand the context of what your customers are coming from and making sure that, your messaging is kind of on point with the way the rest of the world is changing and evolving. And you can do that again in real time. So my time is almost up. This is the last slide. Key takeaways here, if you weren't listening to anything else, is all you really need to know. Twitter is the world's largest focus group. Our audience is our superpower. Leverage the unstructured data experts like NetBase and other companies to make sure that you're getting the most out of it. And then think about ways that you can use Twitter to impact your organization outside of the marketing org. And that's it. I would challenge you today maybe to just think about a question about your business that you would like to answer and plug it into one of the demo stations out there and just see what comes back.
Thank you, Paul. A follow-up question for you. You mentioned that Twitter being a focus group, it's like the best focus group. It's real time. It's a real-time focus group. So we love to promote that with our customers. So NetBase's customer base consists of many big brands and prominent agencies. And believe it or not, even in 2021, companies still struggle with gaining buy-in internally. So what would you say if you have either a client, if you're an agency and you have a client, or if you're a brand and you have, your brand may not be active on social media? How do you gain buy-in from the stakeholders and inspire trust in Twitter data?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think even if there's some skepticism about social, data can do a lot of talking. So I think showing them, going online, showing them like, look, these are actual people talking about our business. And if you're not looking at that and you don't know what's going on, I think that can be really powerful to bring up and show, like, and kind of it's hard to argue with that. So
Evidence.
Evidence. Yes. And I'm sure it's out there. I'm pretty confident almost anything you can look up is going to be on there, and you'll find something new you didn't already know. Yeah, thanks.